but it feels very rewarding each time I see something I've been working on for the last 2 years to be out the door and see it received well. And
Was it different from working at the retails where the games were distributed versus now working in the tech where now the games are being made?
Being in the environment of work definitely brings another type of education, social education, leadership.
sort of get to the point because, it's nice that you want to talk, but let's be honest, you don't really care about the story. Just sort of tell me exactly what you want in one message.
So I know that games can be like super addictive, right? I have a brother and a cousin, and I know that they always go into like the rabbit hole of the games. Would you compare social media to kind of like the game of today?
Be happy. Like, I'm a simple person that has grand goals in that kind of sense. Just like live a peaceful life. That's it.
Look, guys, she's living her dream. That's why, that's great.
I'm good.
That's great. Welcome to the Ethics Guild podcast. We have Fang with us, an amazing leader in the gaming industry. And actually want to dive in real quick into, what has been your experience in the gaming industry? How did this journey start with you?
Okay, so it feels like I'm going to tell you like a very long story about my life story, but I'm going to try to keep it short. So obviously I'm Asian and I have very traditionally Asian parents. So there was like no fun, do homework, don't go out, don't go see your friends, just go to school, come back, do your homework. But I always been very interested in games. I think everyone, as a kid, really like video games, especially. I don't know how old you guys are. I know Wendell is 21. But, for us millennials, at least, the whole video game and computer came out around when we're starting to get into our teenage years. So I played, obviously, a lot of, like, The Sims 2. There were those, like, classic games that you had on your computer and, like, a CD disc. But I think it really became, like, a thing I really wanted to work with when I was around, like, early 20s. I started playing games and I realized like I really find this medium very interesting. As a child, I used to read a lot of books, like excessively, to the point that the librarians knew that I was coming in and they're like, "Oh, it's you again. How many books are you going to read this time?" But I found books and games to be very similar in the ways that it could convey a story. You have these characters, it just happens to be portrayed in a different way. So that kind of already spoke to me in that way that I really wanted to be able to experience, different world. You can go back in time, you can be in the future. There's like endless opportunities to convey a story. So I started to I had no idea how to get into the gaming industry. So I started working for like GameStop, different retailers. I think equivalent is like to Best Buy. So it wasn't really games, but at least I could feel like I was closer to that. And along the way, obviously, I met people who were my managers or coworkers, and they also naturally started working within the game industry. So one day I just applied for one of those very assistant jobs, you could say, to a sales team. And happened to be that one of my former managers were already working there, so he put in a good word. So yeah, that's how I sort of managed to get in. And then I've been there ever since, and I've been working in different fields. But mostly it's just been based on experience. And I was just lucky to get that first opportunity that essentially unlocked the rest of my career.
Cool. I'm pretty sure Autumn is exploding right now. Her brain's going yeah, let's get those questions out. Go ahead, Autumn.
Oh my gosh, I have so many questions, but I guess I'll start with first. So for you, what has been the most rewarding part of your career so far?
So what I do at my job is called release management. So it's essentially project management. So for anyone who ever led a project, you have so many different people you're trying to talk to. And with gaming, it's so many different layers as well, because it's, more of a software and it can be quite complicated. You need programmers, coders, graphics and everything. So for me, it's always rewarding to see that game you've been working on for so long, even though I'm not physically making it. I'm not the one putting everything together or writing in a script, but it feels very rewarding each time I see something I've been working on for the last 2 years to be out the door and see it received well. And, I feel like I'm always helpful to developers or my publishers. So that to me always feels equally rewarding, regardless how big or small the game is.
That's amazing.
Yes. I like your journey of like going into the gaming industry and finding those different like levels of getting into the industry, like working at GameStop. Like that's a great start because it's like that's where all the games are. And then talking with the people all around like the gaming center and learning a little bit more about the industry as you go until you got like a door in. And once you got that door in, it was really interesting. So what I guess one of the questions I have is what was the journey like? And then right when you found that missing key, how did a new journey start for you?
Could you elaborate just a little bit exactly what you mean with key, just so I understand the question?
Yeah, like when you talk to the manager that got you in the door with the gaming company from I believe like the manager from Best Buy that got you in the door from the gaming company. How was it different from working at the retails where the games were distributed versus now working in the tech where now the games are being made?
Yeah. So the funny part is that so obviously retail is retail. Anyone who works with retails, you have the good and you have the bad. You have to deal with customers, and sometimes they're great, sometimes they're not. So it was also my first corporate job. So obviously I was, I think, 25. So to me, everything was really new. Like, oh, yeah, I think I had dyed hair at the time. So I was asking, my former manager at GameStop, actually, it's like, is it okay if I have like dyed hair? It wasn't like any obscure color, which is not my natural hair color. I was so worried that, somehow that would have been seen the bad thing. And I know that in the US it can be sometimes, but in Sweden they're very, like, they don't really care. Like, you have tattoos, you want to have neon pink hair, and no one's gonna really judge you for it. But to me, I was so scared that I was gonna have a bad impact for whatever reason. But it seems like I did a good job. They told me that we had like 300 applicants. It wasn't just my manager putting a good word. I obviously also have to present myself in a good way. So I would say 80% luck and 20% just, me doing a good interview. But it was very different because the company obviously was not super big. Over the years that I stayed there, I worked there for 8 years. They grew from like maybe 80 people to, I think, 600. To me, I could definitely see the change in how, I became more corporate, which is good and bad. To me, ultimately, that was why I left. And, I wasn't working too close with the games initially when I was mostly an assistant to the sales team. But I could definitely see, it was interesting to see, like, sort of like how the sausage is made from the other side. My company at the time was making more strategy games, which I'm still not very interested in. So to me, I was like, oh, just another game. I just don't understand it. But, you always have a stake in it and you want it to go well.
Yes.
I hope that answers your question.
Oh, yeah.
I have a very, I'm very intrigued, obviously, about your career, and you went to school, you prepare yourself, and being in the environment of work definitely brings another type of education, right? Social education, leadership. In your career, what you believe really shaped your leadership style? A particular person, a mentor, a particular project, what you think led you to, and what skill sets do you attribute to your leadership styles from it?
So if I'm going to be honest, I've been presented some opportunities to take more of a leadership management role. I always told people that, or my managers at the time, that it's not necessarily like what I want to do. Like, I don't mind leading people. Towards the end of my career at my former company, I've been training everyone essentially. So I did obviously have a leadership style, even though I wasn't technically a leader, while I still was because I was most senior. I do enjoy more like doing the actual work, because I know managers have to do a lot of like paperwork. It's a lot of politics. I'm a little bit too blunt to be that kind of person. I'll probably say exactly how I think, and that's not going to go well. I probably wouldn't last, in the top levels very long, because people don't like to be told no, essentially. But I think someone who really impacted me is my former manager. His name is Adrian, actually. And he was always trying to push me to like do better, even though I always have this, insecurity with, that people think I'm a fraud somehow, even though I've been there 10 years. I'm like, oh my God, what if people think, I'm really bad at my job? And he always tried to push me to, take challenges. So that has really impacted me. And I always told him that he was the best manager, anyone could have. And he was always, he was the manager, but he was also your friend. So, you can joke around with him, but you still have the respect for him, and the same across the board. So
it's important to have that, develop a trust environment, especially at work, right? In order for you to deposit ideas, insecurities, vulnerabilities, and also for that leader to convert that into challenges that really appeal to your growth, right? And I can see that this really shaped the kind of person you are. And what Fang is saying is very true. Like, she's very direct. She doesn't play around. I'm pretty sure the way she got into the game is like, I'm Fang, open the doors, I'm in, guys. It's like, she's just like, hold on, the position is yours. Right. But knowing her, her integrity. Like, for example, one thing I know about you is your integrity. When you say something, it's gonna happen. Like, you're such an honest person. You're very loving, although it seems like you're cold. But for those that know you, like, Fang is like one of the most loving person, caring, honest, high integrity. How do you apply those values and convictions into your work, and how has that helped you?
told more than once. We have like yearly, feedback sessions that I'm too direct. So obviously, people, because usually when, if you work with online, especially, people say, hi, how are you? And I'm like, sort of get to the point, because, it's nice that you want to talk, but let's be honest, you don't really care how my day is going. Just sort of tell me exactly what you want in one message. And sometimes, depending on the culture, people don't really appreciate that. They want to, have this sort of roundabout. So I've been told that I'm a little bit too aggressive, too direct. So I've been trying to obviously also adapt the way I am to other people. If some people do enjoy that conversation, I try to be a little bit less direct in the way I approach things. But I think, Swedes and I think Dutch people are very similar. We're very just get on with it. But people take that as, I wouldn't say a personal attack, but they feel like, oh, this person a little bit too cold. But I don't know if that answers your question, Wendell.
Yeah.
I know it's so hard too, because it's like you just want to get to the point. You're like, you don't want to like push around like a bush. Like, hey, this is this is what it is. This is how it goes. This is what to do, and then expecting them just to go ahead and just do it, especially as like the leadership position and giving that feedback on like end of year feedback. People, what I noticed too, like even with my mom's stories, when she gets her end of year feedbacks, and she tries to give it like she goes around the bush, and even when she does go around the bush a little bit, they still take it as like a personal attack. And it's like, oh, why do they take it as a personal attack? It's literally feedback for improvement. And I love the blunt style leadership, because like it's just like this is where it was like messed up. This is where you can improve on, rather than beating around the bush, because then you don't have like a clear, like it's not clarity when it's not just blunt. So clarity is one of those perfect things when having that style of leadership and having that style of communication. I get told a lot too sometimes when I'm blunt with certain conversations, where I'm like, sometimes I don't want to hear the full conversation. Like if it's like gossip or something like that, like I wouldn't fully engage into it just because I don't like gossip too much. But then other people, like the social world, or like the average social world, is like, oh, why don't you like gossip? But I'm like, I'm just not intrigued by it. Like, let's talk about ideas.
I raised my hand on that one. I'm not a big like gossip guy either. Like, I have so much. I guess when you have so much going on in your own life, and you have projects and also a lot of goals and objectives, like you understand what's relevant for you and what creates purpose and value in your life. So being entertained by things that are not gonna add value, it's like you lose interest. Autumn, kick in. I know Autumn's gonna. I can see that brain just like. Yeah.
So I actually have two questions. So first, I'll ask you, like, jumping off of the feedback, how do you guys handle feedback from your players? Like, do you guys welcome it, or do you guys adjust the game according to like what the players are looking for, or what does that look like internally?
It depends on the feedback, I would say. Sometimes the feedback is entirely valid. For example, a lot of people have pricing issues with pricing, a lot of like microtransactions, DLC, and then my former company, they did have a lot of DLC. So to me, I could see the reason why. It's always a little bit of a hard place where you are a business, especially if you're on the stock market, you have shareholders. It is a little bit harder to say, well, we're going to do exactly what the players want. Ideally for players, everything is free forever, but you're going to constantly support it, which is obviously, you have to find that, sweet spot where, your game is good enough, but it's also not too expensive and vice versa. But it's hard because, if you're a big company and you want the best graphics, best story, a lot of voice lines, and endless support, it's going to cost, right? So it really depends on the feedback. Sometimes there are things we're already working on, but we just haven't managed to fix it yet because there are a lot of timelines and, you can't rush things out the door just because we want to. So I think, especially now that I've been working with it, I can see, like the way other companies approach things and where I think, well, that's a valid feedback from players and where it's unfair, essentially. And sometimes it's just not a good game. I think with the recent Concord, if you heard about that game that was canceled after like a week. I mean, most of us in the industry could have seen it coming.
Wow. Oh, sorry. Okay, and then
Yeah. Go ahead, Autumn. Go ahead. I know you had two questions.
I'm sorry. So since you're from Sweden, are there any differences in the way that games are marketed towards America versus Sweden or other countries around the world? Like, what are those, if you have noticed any like key differences in the way that games are marketed or maybe like promoted to people?
It's like a huge difference. I think the biggest difference is if you're in the Western, I would say US, Europe versus like Asia, mainly like China, Korea, Japan, because they tend to like different types of games. They don't necessarily always play types of game that we like, which is more like long, single player story. They're a little bit more like a game like, let me see, like League of Legends is really big. It's like a fast pace, you play matches. It's more competitive, like they're very into competitive gaming, especially a lot of like mobile games, because usually people are, sitting on the train, they might travel quite a long distance. It's more into like mobile games, so a fast mobile game, so you can play a game and then you can quit. I think in the Western side of the world, it's a little bit more diversified. And most of the games that I work for, obviously my publisher in the UK, so it's a big chunk is obviously from the US, especially because US is a big market, but we do see a lot of people coming from China because China is such a big country, so naturally you're gonna have a lot of players. But I wouldn't say there's a huge difference besides obviously localizing the trailers, the text, so it makes sense for those players as well.
Interesting. That's very interesting. So, like for example, it's almost like you gotta cater to the different regions of the world. And speaking about catering, you cater a lot of your knowledge in different places in the world, right? And you travel a lot. And most people would love to have that kind of lifestyle, but also it gets fatigue, right? You fatigue to travel and be away from home. What are things that you like about traveling around the world with the gaming industry, and what are things you don't like?
So last year, just to give some context, I traveled, I think, 8 months out of 12, which was quite a lot. And it sounds like, until you do it, it sounds like, oh, that's great. You get to go to London, you get to go to Paris. I am going to Tokyo next month for work. And it sounds great until you realize that you spend half the day, even though Europe is not super far from the rest of from Sweden. Obviously, it takes 2.5 hours tops to get anywhere. But then you have the airport. You have to get away from the airport. By the time you're done traveling, it's been 7 hours, and then you get to stay there maybe half a day or a day, but you don't get to see anything because you're working, and then you gotta go home. So it becomes tiring because you're traveling a lot. It does get, and then you do it every month. It gets a little, not repetitive. I wouldn't say boring either, because it's still a privilege to be able to travel. But definitely, I wish I could teleport, because then, sitting and waiting at the airport is just boring and there's nothing to do. But you have to be there because, rules, right? So, but then again, if you've done it so many times, I know the airport by now in Stockholm by heart. I'm like, this is where we're gonna go. This is where the gate is. Just go over there. Be done.
Security is like, this way. It's like, get out, your fool. I know this shortcut. You did not know.
Security loves me. I know exactly what to do. Just like put everything. It's like, I think there was someone in the UK that was gonna yell at me for not taking out my laptop until she saw that everything was out. And she's like, I could see her, starting to say something, and then she was quiet.
That's like a nice little slap in the face without doing anything. Like,
Cool. I have a question based on the culture, right? Like, when the gaming industry first started, it wasn't as big, and maybe like the older generations didn't get to see it as to be lucrative as it is. You're in the gaming industry, you're engineering, right? You're engineering the game. You're engineering how the design goes through and the codes, right? So that's a form of math, in a sense, like high class math, high skills math. Sorry. So with that, like, I guess I want to bring it back to like the Asian culture with parents. Did they see the sight of the gaming industry being where it's at right now? Like, did they see the vision of you traveling around the world? Because that's lucrative in itself. Like, yes, you got to travel, even though you can't really see the sightseeing as you go around. But it's still like a fun little thing, something like that that's a little different than the corporate world. It gets you around the world to see different perspectives, cultures, and experiences. So what's your thoughts on the older generation not seeing the lucrative and the high skills in the gaming industry? And how would you translate that to, let's say there's a kid out there that wants to get in the gaming industry, but the parents don't see how it could really impact, and that games can be a good thing for society. Like, not all games, but some games actually help with the development and with skills. So what's your thoughts on that?
I think my parents, at least just speaking from my perspective, I think they were happy that I went away from the retail, even though my mom, after like 10 years, like, I still don't understand what you do, because at some point they thought I was calling random people like, hey, do you want to buy my game? And I'm like, that's not what I do. Like, why would you think that I'm just calling, people from like a book and be like, do you want to buy this game? So she doesn't understand, but she's happy because, like, oh, you get to travel the world, you seem to earn a decent amount of money. So there's nothing for them to complain on. Yeah. If there's nothing to complain on, then you're doing well, because my parents love to complain about everything. But I think it's very similar to, the older generation when the TV came out, and people were like, oh, how can you be staring at the TV? You're going to go blind. You can't sit, too close to the TV. And, like how people were afraid of like certain types of music that it's, related to the Satan or the devil, and then people were, seeing that as a bad thing. I think in every generation you're gonna have an older generation that doesn't understand, either because they don't want to take the time to understand. But I do think that now that millennials are becoming parents, I think they have a better understanding because they grew up with technology, which I think, my parents didn't really do that until they were much older, and then for them might be harder to see that everything is online, and then they have a harder time understanding even, how to pay my bills online. Why do I need to log in? What's my password? All these kind of things, right? So I think it's going to become easier now that, the next generation is going to grow up. They're going to have, children, and they already know like how things work. I think it's going to become easier as as time goes, I would say. So I just think that people, they're gonna learn to understand. I think it's just one of these things that, you know, the older generation just think, oh, games are just, you know, they're not good for you. You're just playing around, you're just wasting your time. But it's, like I said, it's much more than that.
Yeah, they call you lazy back in the days when you were playing too much video. You're being lazy. What are you going to gain from that? But I do think that games did explore what you couldn't financially. Like, for example, a game will take you to an adventure that you probably always had in your imagination, but you couldn't afford going to. Give you a good example. Like, this is probably Fang's favorite game, like mine's Mass Effect, that took you to a journey of being this integral leader trying to save the like a galaxy. Like, how can you do that if you have very little resources, right? The game was an escapade for that kind of adventure. And but again, like I said, some parents, I don't think a lot of Latin parents were very supportive of playing these things because they saw it as a waste of time. You should read a book. But it was an entertainment. You know, it was a story. There was something behind that make you connected with the game. And I wanted to ask you that, how how you believe that games have connected with you, and how has that like evolved some of your thought process, right?
I mean, it's we're gonna probably come into some of my favorite games naturally. To me, like the analogy that I made with books, I used to love reading books, and to me, it was just that you would have an image of whatever was happening in the book in your head, and the only difference is that I'm engaging more actively by playing a game that I'm controlling, and maybe I'm playing games that I would never have foresee the story or the way it impacted me, or so very different to see something and to read something, right? So sometimes, when we try to figure out how do I solve this problem and someone explains to you on the whiteboard and you see, everything, someone like some people just visually just like learn by seeing visuals. So some people like to read and do things. So to me, I just found that it was, for example, one of the games that are my favorite is called Journey. It came like 2013. It's a short game, but it goes through the whole phase of life and everything. And then initially when you look at it, it's like, oh, what is this? You're just walking around in a desert. Like, what is the point of this game? But not until you played it, you realize that, no one is ever speaking. There's no text. There's nothing. It's just the music and the things you're going through while you're playing it. So to me, it's just, a very clever use of the medium where, you don't necessarily have to talk or, read. You just have to feel it. And that's something I think books and, TV to a certain extent cannot do.
Yeah.
How are you, Autumn?
No, it's so interesting. I was actually just thinking about how you were saying that you're very like assertive and direct. And I think it's funny how like some women who are in certain positions, like for me, for example, sometimes I feel like it takes a lot for me to be direct or to use my voice because whether it's just being like, I don't want to come across a certain way, or it just is like difficult. So what advice would you give to young women who are coming into leadership positions, who are struggling to find their voice? Yeah, what advice would you give to them?
I mean, as someone who still have imposter syndrome, I can understand sometimes I also get unsure. It's like, is this really my place? Do I even know what I'm talking about? So I like to gaslight myself most of the time. I think that, if you know that you're right, or you just want to have, given your opinion, just even if you're insecure, if you're not sure, sometimes you have to like fake it until you make it. I hate when people say that, but it's partially true that, if you feel it in your heart, this is the right thing, even if people might not agree with you, you stand up for that. And especially depending on also like sometimes you just have to read the room. Like, is this really the place or the time to share it? Can I share it with someone else that is maybe one-to-one? But I don't feel like you should ever be, scared or, think that it's going to have a bad consequence for you to speak up. But it really depends, obviously, on the situation. I understand that some people might not want to say it in a big public space or in a big meeting, for example. So I think it's also a little bit of just learn about who these people are. Are they going to be able to hear what you're saying? Because sometimes that's also the other problem where you might be right, but if the person's not willing to hear what you're saying, then maybe you need to find someone else that can either help amplify your voice or, speak for you, for example. So,
I got a follow-up question for you. So I got to say, I do believe that, for example, a lot of men make a little bit more mistakes than women. And being a voice in any industry, being a female, sometimes, and it's very unfortunate. I don't, I definitely disapprove that a man can't be led by a woman, right? Your voice, how many have you struggled in your career for people to listen to your voice, and then the famous, like, kind of quietly you say, I told you, but you obviously don't say it, right? But how were you able for people to trust your voice, right, with all the experience you have gathered in your career?
I think I have had both types where I feel like I definitely have been heard, and sometimes I have not been heard at all, which have been very frustrating. So I would say like this: I think growing up and obviously living in Sweden has been a privilege, because I know there are different cultures in every country. Sweden is obviously not perfect by any means. I do think that we're more equal here. I never really had a problem where I was being dismissed or anything because I'm a female, or I've been, giving a job just because, oh, it looks better if we have a woman here instead of a man. I do think that a lot of companies do want to hire more women. They take an active stance, but they're not going to hire you just because you're a woman. Like, you have to have some merits. So I think that at least most women that I have known in the industry, they have not felt that way either, that they've been discriminated at. We still have issues with, obviously, the pay is a little bit lower. I know that I was paid lower than my male colleagues, for example, even though we had the same job and the same experience. So, you're going to find that everywhere. It's unfortunate, but hopefully that's going to improve with time as well. Sorry, what was your other question? I had it in my mind, and then I got this.
I'm actually glad that you were able to explain that, because a lot of corporations here in the United States, they want to look good on paper. Oh, they want to say they are diverse in terms of like race, origins, age, and it looks good on paper. But yet, when you're working for that corporation, for example, how do they integrate really your thoughts, ideas, right, and your convictions, right? And that's what is segregated. What looks good on paper doesn't mean it's practice, right? So those are one of the biggest issues in the United States. It's like for example, good example, right? And the pronouns in some companies, you had to respect it or say it, and it's almost like it was an obligation. And I remember there was somebody that came to me, and said, I feel uncomfortable saying any other pronouns, right? And I was like, well, don't focus on that. Why focus on that? Find a solution. It was like, but I can't find a solution. As well, the solution is very simple. Everyone has a legal name. Start there. If you don't feel comfortable saying something and you feel that they're obligating you to do it, and that there's retaliation for not following that, look for the legality. The legality is legal names, right? Call that person by their legal name. There's no offense to anyone. As a matter of fact, you're giving them the respect they deserve as much as you're giving yourself that respect. So I'm very happy to hear that in Sweden you guys don't go through those things, right? Kevin, I know you have a question.
One of the things, an analogy that I love, is it's about this candle holder, and it's placed in 3 different rooms. So you have this candle holder that's in the trash room, and it's going to be considered trash. You have a candle holder in the living room, and it's going to be considered a regular candle holder. Now you have a candle holder in a gallery with a white wall behind it. Now it's an art piece. And that's kind of like the rooms that we step into. some rooms it's going to be the environment, the people that are there aren't going to give that candle holder a room to talk in. Like they would just that room isn't as good versus like next room, another level up, where you have like a little bit more like pull push into it. And then you have the gallery room where it's like, okay, it's now they really listen to that idea in a sense. During your evolution in the industry, when you had those challenges in the trash room versus now challenges in the living room, and now you're in that gallery room where now people are going over to you for that and for that leadership and advice. When you're in all three rooms, what was that like? What was that like for you?
So it's similar to what I mentioned earlier regarding that I never really felt like I've been dismissed, based on my gender or how I look or my race or anything. I do feel that it was hard initially to, for me, I always thought in the first 2 years, I was like, oh, but maybe I don't have enough experience. Obviously, people here are much smarter than me. Like they know exactly what they're talking about. So I was, willingly like stepping back a little bit because I was like, oh, I need to observe. I need to learn more before I feel like what I'm saying is actually correct, because maybe I have a lot of opinions, but that doesn't necessarily translate to me knowing, things at work. And now that I've been obviously in the more gallery room, and people have approached me and asked me, I think at one point towards the end, like I think I came in at 9 o'clock. I was not at my desk sitting down until 1 p.m. because people kept coming over. It's like, oh, can you come over and we need to look at this and what do you think about that? And I was like, guys, I have things to do. Like I can't like spend 3 hours talking. But I definitely felt like, not that it's like, oh, finally people are hearing me, but I was happy that people could feel like, oh, this is someone who knows what you're doing, and she can provide at least information. Whether we're gonna use that information or not, that's entirely up to them. But I was mostly glad that I could just be of service to other people, because ultimately as a company, everyone has the same stake. We all want the product or the game to go well. I know that one of my struggles were mostly regarding when I said no or we can't do it, they took it as you don't want to do it, which is not true. It's like I telling you no because it's not feasible, it's unreasonable. This is a timeline we cannot commit to, but people hearing no usually means you don't want to do it, and they will try to get someone else to do it. But so that was a little bit of a struggle. Like you came to me for my opinion and my help. I'm telling you this, but you don't like it. It's not because I want you to fail or I don't want to help you because I feel like this is boring. No, it's just not doable. But I think that's a problem that I think happens in every company. So
yeah, it's not like you broke into the office door and been like, no, stop the project, man.
Exactly.
Went over to you.
I want to go home at 5 p.m. So no, we're not gonna do it.
Yeah, I could picture Fang kicking the door. Then I was like, "Stop right now! We're all taking vacation for 2 weeks, guys."
Yeah. You broke through. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. You can go.
You broke through so many glass ceilings, right? Even just being like being a woman in a male testosterone. More like there's more males than testosterone in the gaming industry, right? Like almost like a lot of guys play games, right? So being a woman and breaking through those glass ceilings, respectable and honorable. So that congrats to you. And I'm gonna pass it down to Autumn. I think she has a question.
It's okay, thank you. So I know that games can be like super addictive, right? I have a brother and a cousin, and I know that they always go into like the rabbit hole of the games. Would you compare social media to kind of like the game of today, where like when you're playing a video game, right, you can like plug into it, you can unplug from it, but social media is just always kind of like there, like people have access to it 24/7, kind of like a never-ending cycle of it. When you're actually playing a game though, right, there's like story arcs, you're winning. With social media, it's just kind of like, I call it like a doom scroll, you're just scrolling. But would you compare that to like the game of today? What's your opinion on it?
That's a very interesting question. I wouldn't necessarily compare. There obviously are games that are designed to like hook you instantly, and then have to pay to play another level. I don't really like those kind of games. I think those are quite harmful, especially to children or people are very impressionate. But even for people who are like more receptive to like addiction, for example, like you get addicted to a game and you just play, especially if they're trying to like get more money out of you, then you can just spend so much money and so much time. And I don't want to think of them as like games, because they are a game, but they're designed to just essentially be like a casino slot machine. You would just put money in it, and then hopefully you have fun for like the 10 seconds that you see the numbers come up, but then you have nothing else. You lost your time, you lost your money. With social media, I think the difference is that social media can have a lot of propaganda. It can have a lot of misinformation, which I think games doesn't really have to the same kind of sense, because they're trying to tell a story. Of course, you can still have games that are portraying women a certain way, men in a certain way, or they can have some of the older games maybe now would not work today, in the way that they are stereotyping certain ethnicities or genders or whichever it could be. So not saying that games are perfect in that kind of sense either, but like you said, doom scrolling and just who is owning the social media, like what is their objective, for example, especially now with the very recent elections and the president, for example, like who's owning the social media. I think with games there's a little bit less censorship, or someone trying to control the narrative, because there are private companies essentially, right? So
Right. And
Yeah.
so it's interesting too, like for kids, do you think that there should be like an age limit to when kids are like allowed to play games or even to go on social media?
So, I mean, I think for most of these like Facebook and everything, they do have, I think it's 13 or it's a 16 for certain apps. It's just not enforceable. There is some, you have the ESRB rating in the US, for example. So you have the age ratings to indicate like this is something that has a lot of violence, it's a lot of blood. You can usually see on the package, it will tell you like all bad language, or maybe a lot of like suggestive themes or something like that. But usually parents, they don't really care. I see more when I used to work at GameStop, and that was back when Grand Theft Auto 5 came out. I would, they would come in with their kids and they're like 8 or 10, and I would tell them like, hey, this is like an 18 plus game. It's like a mature game. They're like, oh, yeah, whatever. I don't care, right? It's like, okay, but you're the parent. I can't sell this game to if the child will come in alone. But if the parent's there, I mean, technically, I'm not, there's no one by the law telling me I can't sell. If the parent agrees, then it's fine. Some of them will come back like, oh, you didn't tell me it was this and this. It's like, yeah, but you have to read the box, right? That's what it's for. So I think it's just also parents taking more interest what their children are doing, because same thing with social media, you can't control what they're saying, but if you have a good communication with them and have a good relationship, then it's a little bit easier to see like what are they actually doing online. Same thing with games.
Definitely. Something that you open like an umbrella for me, because obviously parents have to guide children into what's convenient for their age, right? And start educating themselves depending on the group age, right? One of the things that I noticed in the last probably 5 years is that, for example, the European Union has protected their citizens from the usage of data from corporations like Meta, etc. Right? And so that way, I believe that you don't get easily manipulated. Your data it's not like somebody's making a profit out of that. Like in the U.S., it's almost like our soul has been sold to these companies, and we can't manage to get out of it or do something about it. How do you see that in effect in Europe? How do you feel more protected in Europe when it comes to your data?
I mean, on a day-to-day basis, I don't see much more than, oh, do you accept that we are tracking your data? Like every time I go anywhere, it's just like yes, I accept these cookies, or no, only certain. Like honestly, I never really read them. But I think the difference is that if I want to delete all my data from Facebook, I can ask them like, hey, you have to do this for me. And I think that's a good thing, even though from a company that had to implement the GDPR, it was like a nightmare. It's like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? We have to work so much around the system and everything. But I ultimately think it's a good thing, because like otherwise you can just take my data and just sell it forever without me knowing. I mean, I still have Facebook and I still have Instagram. I mean, I probably already sold my soul, but I do feel like it's a good way to just protect yourself.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
the whole thing with
No,
with
no, go ahead,
data
go ahead.
is still quite new. Like, Facebook haven't been around that long, all things considered. So I think we're just learning as we go, like, oh, what is actually, I think I read somewhere it's like people comparing the data is the new oil, that is equivalent, like, hey, we want your data. This is the new thing that we want to trade with, right? So go ahead.
I'm in sync with you. You know something, and because that's exactly what happens. These companies are making so much money based on what you do daily, your actions, what you view. It's almost like your privacy is there for sale. And guess how much money you make? Zero. So to me is, how much do we value our privacy? How much do we value the things that we do, right? And why haven't we been able to really negotiate about to these companies about like, hey, you're making billions of dollars, right? And yes, I'm using your platform, but you're making so much money out of it. You say that it's free, but it's not free. It comes with a price tag. That price tag is you're making money off of my actions. Do you think people really view it that way, or they're just like, oh, we're naive and say, oh, it's free, but it's really not. It's a business.
When I got Facebook and Instagram, it was a lot less ads. I mean, even if you go to websites like, Reddit and stuff, you see a lot of ads. That's, I think, become the problem, where we're just bombarded with all these ads all the time, and that's how they make the money. Like, I get really annoyed because I'm like, oh, I just want to go to this website where it's like 3 pop-ups and you asking about information and data. But I think a lot of people just don't read it, except terms of use, right? Who in their mind actually reads the terms of use? No one does. And we just click, yes, I accept, and that's it. But it's also designed to be like super long and, fine, like written in a way that it's like, oh, I can't be bothered, I don't understand anyway. So I think people, like, they also use that against you. Like, they know you're not gonna read it, so technically they can put whatever you want, and you can't do anything about it, essentially. I think, wasn't there a case where someone passed away at Disneyland, and someone had, they had to accept like a Disney Plus subscription, and then somewhere in there they said, you can't sue us. It's like all these kind of things, they know that you're not going to read it. So, but it's still your responsibility. So I feel like hopefully there should be a better way to make it easier for the average consumer to just understand what exactly is going on.
I'll jump in, Autumn. I know that you were talking about that Disney incident.
Yeah.
No, it's crazy because, like, when I speak about this to certain individuals, they think I'm crazy, and they're like, oh, they're not stealing our data, you're crazy. But I'm like, no. And I think like certain companies, they kind of ride on like the inability to like pay attention of certain people, and some people close to me, like, they do not pay attention to any of that. They accept all the cookies every single time. And when I warn them, they just are like, oh, okay, like, we've had enough of hearing from you about this topic. But I do think like we all have a choice. And I've had a coworker who gave up having a phone. They would just ride a bike everywhere, and they were just like, no more, I'm not selling any more of my data. So I do think like we do have a choice, right? Like, we enjoy like social media, we enjoy having the internet at our fingertips, but it does come at a price, because we could just throw our phones in the river and just like, live every day not knowing and having that instant access. So yeah, I just think it's really interesting. Like, how do we build like a trust with these companies? Because we truly don't know what they're doing with our data. It is like an experiment. Like, they are tracking everything that we are doing. It's so interesting. So it's like, what is the cost of like wanting to be in trendy, like with the latest trends of the society versus like just living a free life. I don't know. So
That's what I like about the GDPR is like they have to scramble so you're anonymous. Like you can't just sell this like, oh, I got this data from Wendell, now I'm gonna sell it to some random company so they can try to like bombard him with ads or anything. So, I do think that's a good approach. At least like the European Union has enforced it, and that sort of forces all the companies like if you wanna, have this working in our countries, you just have to adhere to it. Hopefully, like that's going to be something going on in the future as well. Same thing with the USB-C. Like now, all the Apple phones have to have USB-C because they decided like, no, we don't want to have cables or everything, so you're just gonna do it. So I think those like, I think it just takes people to just push for this. Like, what is the best for our citizens? What is the best for the environment? But obviously, they want to make it inconvenient for you to not pay attention. Because when you read like a legal document, you're gonna buy a house or anything, they give you a couple papers and they're gonna be like, here's a book, and you just read it. It doesn't take that long because you have to understand it. It's not like we're gonna call a lawyer, like, can you read this terms of use so I can sign up for Netflix? No one's gonna do that.
Yeah, that's funny. Like, imagine you calling at 1 o'clock in the morning. Hey, Esquire, I need your help on these terms. Can you? They'll be like, they'll hang on you. Go ahead, Kevin. I'm sorry.
I found it so interesting. Like they only give you two options: accept or decline. And I always wonder what happens if they add in the third option. You get to choose now which ones they get to collect, right? Or which ones you don't want to be collected. There isn't like it's either like you have this road or this road, and there's a block in between. If you don't want to accept this road, then you can't use it. So the corporations, it's kind of like a trap setup. Like, let's say I wanted to watch Nemo on Disney, and they don't have it on YouTube, and I don't want to pirate it off the internet. All right, so I got a Disney Plus subscription, but then I had to accept all these terms without a choice of like, oh, I can't sue Disney if I die in their dip park. So it's so hard when they don't give you that choice. It's only one path, another path. I think something that could bring trust to corporations is adding that choice in between. And they are pioneering the data industry. There's layers. It's a layering above our world of the internet, and it's just starting off new. And you have these big players that are taking big segments of it. Like their platforms have a lot of people in it. More than what they can in the physical world, and they're tracking us like dots on a map. Like, hey, you just went over to Google, now you went over to Facebook, and then you went over to a blog that talks about food. Now you're on Instagram, and now they sell you an ad about food blogs. And it's like, okay, where the heck did the food blog come from when I just clicked on just one website about food, right? So it's very interesting. And I use ads too as a person who pays for ads to be placed on people's stuff. I use it. It's interesting. It works, right? It works a little bit. It gets me out there, but it sucks because it has to be paid, and it's not like at the organic rate yet, but it's a useful tool sometimes. And it's going to more eyes. But at the same time, I just wish it wasn't like off like when I had to put in the stuff, I do key interest and keywording, like hip hop clothing or like clothing brand or like apparel. Like it's just like keywording some stuff. So if somebody searched up hip hop clothing, they'll probably see my site or see my designs up on their feed somewhere. It's useful. Is it ethical? That's the question, right? Is it ethical? It's so hard.
I think and just to bounce off your quote, right, is everything extreme is bad. And I believe that's where we are at with the extreme of everything is allowed or the option of not allowed. So because there's not a middle ground to play with, it is impossible to gauge what that middle ground even looks like and how is it going to benefit everyone. Because of that, if you're an either or extreme, you feel segregated. Segregated if you're in, segregated if you're out. Your options are very limited. And how do you respond to that, right? How do you make the field a little bit more practical for everyone? And I believe that's the challenges that, we as citizens, we need to make to ingrain a new concept to our political leaders, to make them understand that my life choices are, they mean more than just becoming data for someone to fish and dish and create revenues from it. Where's, like, what I'm saying is, like, make revenue out of it, but where's my part? Look, we live in I wanted to ask you this, Fangan. Sorry, Fang. I call her Fangan, like I know her for so long. But American people are working 2 to 3 jobs to sustain a very, I would say, a sustainable lifestyle. 2 to 3 jobs. They're hustling more and more. The elites are not hustling. They're gathering data, making their job more automatic, automation, right? While everyone else is hustling harder and harder and harder. And that's where the dilemma comes. When is that bridge and that gap going to close down so we can all enjoy that lifestyle without spending, I don't know, 50, think about it. You spend 25% of your life sleeping. Let's say you spend 80% of your time working and 5% of your time in recreation. Ask yourself, what kind of lifestyle do you really have? And that's where I want to go with you, Fang, because you've seen the perspective of American society, and you've seen the perspective of European society, and also the Asian side. What differences you see in the quality of life of these 3 places?
So I haven't worked in Asia, but obviously my parents are from Asia. I've seen, the issues. Obviously, I try to read about politics everywhere. I think in Asia, it's just a matter of culture, where it's like you cannot go home until your manager's going home. If he's not going home, you're not going home, even though you're sitting after 6 o'clock just browsing. If he doesn't go by, midnight, you're not going home either, because, it looks bad, for example. Or like in Japan, you have to go out to dinner with your manager if he offers you. You can't say no, which is why you have, these jokes about, a lot of older, middle-aged Japanese men just falling asleep outside the subway because they had to go out, they had to drink. It's impolite to say no. It's impolite to do a heap of different things. While at least, obviously, I'm not American. You guys know this better than I am. But the impression that I got is that, like Wendell said, like the minimal wage is so low that everyone has to work different jobs. People go to TikTok to, try to get famous, maybe not necessarily because they want to be famous, or the next Kardashian is more like, I just want to get viral so I can make money out of this. And I think, at least, I can only speak for Sweden. I know, Europe is quite big. It's different cultures everywhere. But I think Sweden really embraced the work-life balance. If I need to go to the doctors in the middle of the day, or I have to do anything, like, people who have children, they need to pick up the kids at 3 p.m. It's never a problem. It's like, okay, you tell them why you need to go, and you go, and then people trust you to make up for the time another day. Or, oh, today I just came in a little bit earlier, or I'm gonna stay up for another thing. No one really could police you, like, when did you clock in? When did you leave? Why were you not at your desk? So it's a little bit of a different trust. But I think the other thing is that in Sweden, it's very hard to get fired. You have your 6 months period where it's like it's called suspended period, where both you and employer can just say, like, hey, it's not working, and then you have 2 weeks notice, and then that's it. Instead of, I think I had like 3 months. Different companies do it differently, but it's usually 2-3 months. So it also gives you the security, like, hey, I really need to take a sick day, or I really have to do something. It's a family emergency, or whichever it could be. I'm not going to get fired next time I come in. Like, I know this is my job. I'm going to keep it. I think it's also allowing you to not have the stress of, oh, I was late. Will I keep my job? Or if I tell my boss, no, will he fire me just because he doesn't like me? I think the labor laws is also like a very big thing.
Yeah,
But
I think
that's what I've seen, but I don't know if that's true. Obviously, I can be biased.
I think you have a good point. Like perhaps people are more mature in understanding that life happens outside of work, and they're more open to, hey, you have a child, you know, that child is more important than your job. We understand. Go ahead, take care of that. And like you said, later on, I know you're going to do the right thing. And I think sometimes the laws are not the problem. I believe the interpreters, right? Here in the US, we have a lot of people in leadership positions, especially like middle ground leadership position, right? Mid management that work in stores, especially in retail, right? They're good workers, and they probably are good managers, but they're not good leaders. Because they are not good leaders, they don't comply with the understanding of human behavior or emotional intelligence, or also human resources. Also, companies, what they do is they want a leader to be everything. You got to be human resources, you got to be logistics, you got to be manager, you got to be psychologist, you got to be sales. It's almost like you have to comply with every single checkbox. And in psychology, our brain is only designed to do one great thing at a time, right? Like this is why when you have anxiety, right, and you start concentrating, you meditate, you can get out of the cycle of anxiety by just thinking of nothing and concentrating, right? So you're coming from one environment to another, right? So to me, it's pretty eye-opening that the interpreters in Sweden are perhaps better designed to understand the human needs that here in the United States. I'm gonna pass it to Autumn. Like, I'm pretty sure she has some awesome questions about this topic.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to hear that there's more flexibility over there because, yeah, I don't think, I mean, companies like to portray that they are flexible, but if you actually have an emergency that does come up, it is implied that like you are a problem. And they'll work around you, but it almost feels like you're taking the burden on for the company. Like, I shouldn't have had an emergency, like I'm so sorry. And I do think that like it's interesting how social media has become another revenue for some people because it offers them that flexibility. Maybe they can work from home, they can take care of their kids. And I also just think it's so interesting now how our younger generations, they are contemplating like being a TikTok star as a career. And we're like, all of us, we didn't grow up thinking that maybe like, oh, one day I'll become famous by being an actress or an actor. But I do think it's interesting how like it's shifting. So like kids are now thinking like, well, I can, what is that called? Twitch, right? They can be a live streamer and they can play video games and get paid for it. Or I can be a TikTok star. It's just interesting to see the evolution of the way like the job sphere is going. Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have more like social media influencer, and that's become a career. I think the danger with like Twitch and TikTok is that, first of all, like with TikTok, you don't know how long is it actually going to exist. But also, I think it's like a quick, you get rich. Some people who are lucky, they get rich and they get rich very fast, but it's not going to last forever. And I think that's what maybe the younger generation see, like, oh, all these TikTokers or Twitch streamers, they make so much money, like so easy. I get to do whatever I want, that people just watch me and that's it. But obviously it takes a lot of work and not everyone can succeed. And I think that's the danger. Maybe I sound like an old boomer now, like, oh, you should take a regular job 9 to 5. Like, what's wrong with that? But, I think there is like a fake perception that it's so easy. Like, well, it's not. You need to have editors, you have to employ people, it's not like it's going to happen every day. So
yeah,
you never know where these apps or mediums go either. So
it's also interesting too because like when we all go on an interview for a job, they are offering insurance, and with like social media jobs, like they're not offering insurance. Like there's no, I don't know, certain things that they're putting aside for you. They're just like, you're just being exploited, kind of,
It's like a media platform, right? Like
Yeah.
you are that channel, what it used to be like on cable. Like now on social media, you
Right.
became like Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, like some things like that, right? Or you became ABC. That was like now on, like that's how you used to click through buttons. Now it's okay. I'm gonna go see at the Skill podcast. I want to see what they're all about, right? And then they now watch our media like a show. That's where social media comes in, and they won't like provide the insurance because they're just a platform for you to showcase, right? Like cable didn't provide insurance to the different platforms that were broadcasting to different networks that are broadcasting on their platform, right? Social media is that new cable, in my belief, it's that new cable, or it's that new entertainment for it. I find it interesting, yeah, there's no insurance or nothing on there. And it's a new way of navigation. And on Twitch, it's not easy money. It's they had to work hard, right? Like they work hard, they do their edits. It's just a different type of work. It's a different type of work. It's a digital work. It's not the physical work. And a lot of people want to work digitally now rather than in physical. Like they don't want to move their bodies, but moving your bodies it's a good thing, and working in the physical places is also a good thing. You really see the world rather than like I'm a digital worker now, right? So I work in the cave almost all day, which is it's like it's a good, it has its wins and its losses, like with everything. It has its goods and its bads, and it's a privilege, and at the same time it's like you have to sustain discipline, but you have to sustain discipline by yourself. You have to get some air, but sometimes it's like, okay, when should I get air? Because I'm constantly like, I want to just get through the list. I want to just keep checking stuff off, and I want to make a longer list after I check that off, right? Because I want to think a little bit more. But then finding that it's time to just go outside it's hard in itself sometimes. Just to put like a pause button or to turn it off, and no one's there to tell you to turn it off. So like you could just go down like an endless loop. So I guess like being that digital and physical, like how has that evolved through time, and where do you think it's gonna go? Like as we go further in, and generations now are like, oh, I want to be digital workers.
It's actually interesting because I know in Asia that has been like a big thing where a lot of people like obviously everyone have like a university degree because you have to have a college degree, but they are actually leaning into more like the blue collar job. Like they want to become just working with their body, just like you say, because for them that's more rewarding than sitting at the office. You can't go home. It's mindless work. I don't know exactly what they do, so they're taking more interest in actually doing physical work. So I do think that we're still probably going to have a lot of like these digital jobs. I work 100% remotely because my office is actually in the UK. So I can understand, I can really resonate with, sometimes you just sit at home. It's like every day it's the same thing. It's like, oh, when should I eat? It's 2 p.m. I haven't eaten. There's no one who is telling me, oh, let's go out for lunch. All these kind of things. You have to take discipline. I do think we are eventually going to come back to the similar trend that people will want to like do physical labor, or they want to go back to the office. I think we're still in this, like some people prefer to go to the office, some people don't. And obviously companies want everyone to be in the office for whichever reason, if it's because they don't want to pay for a building that is empty essentially, or they don't trust you to do your job because you're remote, or if it's like tax questions, it could be anything. But I do think, eventually people are gonna want to have a physical connection with people. Like, if you go to McDonald's, you're never talking to anyone, you're just ordering whatever you want off the screen and then you get it and that's it. And I think people will miss that eventually, that, hey, I actually miss regular human connection, just like talking to someone. But I think we're still in this bubble of, everything's digital. This is great. I don't have to ever leave my house, but we will miss that.
And I want to piggyback on what you guys were saying a little bit about, like, how a lot of people misinterpret success and how much it costs. There's a lot of work and also the resilience that needs to come with it. I remember when we first started the Ethics Guild podcast, obviously in my ignorance, I was trying to find how you can, make things a little bit more viral, right? Thinking that it was different than the concept of like create value, and then the value will create everything else, right? And to create value, it takes a lot of time to create that, right? And value markets itself, right? It distributes because people are going to say, like, I find this very interesting, and they start, obviously telling somebody else, right? And everyone is looking always for a shortcut to success. When I was going and looking for advice, right? Because again, I wasn't an expert in this area, and I found that everyone is trying to look for a shortcut. Everyone, and sometimes it's not the project, it's the journey, right? The journey that you go through, that you withstand, that you understand, that you learn, you adapt, you evolve, and then you repeat it again and again and again and again until the day that you say, I need to find a new purpose in life to continue living. Because normally when we lose purpose in life, this is one where we decay quicker. And it's interesting to me to talk about when you go through that journey, right? The human connections you make with people. Like, for example, working with Kevin and Autumn, it creates a bond that is going to be so unique. And with Fang too, and obviously I'm much older than all of you guys, but it's to leave that distinctive memory, right? That unique memory is like, something, I once knew this person, and this person put me in this journey, and we went together in this journey, and we learned so much from each other. And remembrance, that, right? That human interaction that was once created. And like you said, Finn, there's a lot of people that are looking for to be unique and live a great experience at work. And a lot of people are starting to realize that, why work on somebody else's dreams when I can work on my own? Why should I capitalize on somebody else getting more revenues when I can do that for myself? So I think also this is helping for people to self-develop and start building confidence in themselves to grow in every area as a human, right? A few years ago, I came to the conclusion, I was working in this company, and I remember telling Kevin, I was like, how much money we make for this company, and in comparison to what we make, it's not even 1% of what we make is what we give, right? Take aside all the impact and the finances, but take, for instance, the human development, the training, the mentoring, the giving 100% every day. That is intangible, but at the same time is irreplaceable. And that kind of experience, do you get that back from the company, from other interpreters? More than likely you don't. So where is the smart investment in the future? Perhaps fulfilling your dreams. But you got to start somewhere. I'm not saying that take that path immediately, because if you don't know much better, you got to learn it somewhere, and you pay the price for that. For every win, there's a loss. You might have to lose a little bit. Like Fang's story is very interesting. I started at GameStop. That's where she paid her dues. And she then worked for a company similar to Best Buy. That's where she paid her dues. But then that catapulted her to where she wanted to go. So, taking shortcuts in business and life, it definitely leads to, I would say, disappointments. So I would say, for whoever's out there, if you start something, just be resilient. Sometimes resilience overcomes talent, because you can be very talented, but you give up. Never give up for what you love. Never give up for what you stand for your convictions. Love yourself. Learn how to love yourself through your life. This is coming from a guy that, I've been through hell in my life, and I'm a happy man today. I feel free. And this is why, I share these thoughts with everyone, because how do you become free? It's like you learn how to love yourself. You learn how to understand that you can always amend things, although you can never undo the past, but you can always correct and amend. So I don't know if you guys have something in your life that in your career that you felt that the experience wasn't there, although you were giving the ultimate experience, and how that felt for you guys? And that goes for everyone on the table.
Who would like to go first? Rock, paper, scissors? No, okay.
So I just wanted to mention what you said about the question about the human connection, because I just thought about when you mentioned that I was working for GameStop and everything, and that human connection that we made with my manager, that was essentially also partially the ticket in for my next job. And I don't know, I mean, obviously you guys been working with a lot of people online, but every time you meet them, we still have the emphasis like, oh, let's meet them in person, because it always changes the dynamic. I've met so many, like developers, partners, like I've seen them a million times online. I know exactly how they look like, how they sound like. Then we meet, and somehow that always makes us closer for whichever reason. And even though like nothing changed, we're still the same person, we still work the same way, it always like gives a different depth to like the relationship. And I just think that's why, this whole thing with the digital area, that we will miss it, because we're going to realize like, hey, we're humans, we're made for being together in a group, not just online, but actually physically. Yeah, that I just wanted to just bring that up.
That's a good point.
And when I was working in retail, I was constantly thinking about my dreams. All right. And I would do such hard work at the job, and we'll make them like a lot of money just off simple things. And we'll give them advice and suggestions and our opinion on how it could roll down and how we made the money. And even then, like, you have these, it was the room that it's the room that we were in. You have these people that didn't see it, but they loved the results, but they didn't want to implement it. But they loved the results, but they still wanted to do something else. But they loved the results, so they didn't want you to do that, but do what your task was. And you're told politically to do this, right? And it's like, but they still love the results. So it was so hard. So it had me keeping thinking about my dream constantly. And they'll do like their own political moves and try to do like a shifting in positions of like where you will be like working on the floor. So then you could try to I don't know why. Sometimes it was for them, it was like to grow in other areas, but sometimes you're keeping an area growing so well. Why would they even move you to another area? So just the politics in dealing with people that are scared of potential, in a sense, right? Because that's why they'll use some type of strategic moves that are just like they're powerhouse moves, right? Thinking about my dream, I will walk on the floor, just going around in circles, like a dog in a cage, just going going around in circles, just constantly thinking like, oh, I could be at home right now. I could be looking up this. I could be learning about this. I could be reaching out to this many people. And then instead, I'm just walking around in a circle, not really doing anything, just circle. I'll sign up. Maybe me and Wendell will be like the highest signers, like signups and memberships for the company. And still, it was like, oh, I just got to walk around and just do nothing. And then when I finally got to doing the dream, it was a build up, right? So it wasn't like I just jumped out into it. I was working, and then I was working on the dream. And we had a team get involved on the dream. And then we started working it more and more and more. And the dream started becoming more stable. Like, it wasn't just a fragment in the air. It was now like in the world, and I was actually doing it. And when the dream became stable, I was finally able to leave the retail job, of course, with the goal of getting like a lifetime. But so before leaving, we had to get that lifetime, right? So that goal was accomplished, and I was like, I'm out. I'm going straight for my dream. And as soon as I stepped out of the job and the dream was stable, like magic happened. Like more people started coming. Like something unlocked in the universe to just be like, okay, we're just gonna send people towards Kevin's and Autumn's and Matthew's team. We're gonna send them all over there so then they can keep working on their dream. And now this dream got stable, then another dream popped up with the fashion in a way. I was like, how can I, like, retail took up the weekdays, dream took up the weekends. We were working 6 to 7 days a week sometimes, just to go over. So that was like us paying our dues just to get in. Now we're working mainly the weekends, and the weekdays are kind of freed up. So that gave it more of a possibility to be like, I could dream of another thing and even go after that dream. And I had two dreams and keep going forward. But they still connect to photography. So like this is the photo, right? So like it still connects to one common dream. And now we're able to focus on another realm. So I found it interesting how like it was a build-up process, paying the dues, working this job, developing something while working, finally having it developed enough where I could leave this job and work on this job. And then now we also have time to do ethics skills. Like if I was working at Nike and on the wedding and on ethics skills and on Maestro, that would have been like 4 projects. And Nike was the one that was like the biggest one. X that out the way. Now it's like the wedding, 2 days. 2 days from the weekend. Boom. Maestro and ethics skills now could fill up the weekdays. So then I could go back on like a hard work type of schedule in a sense. So it's like fulfilling your dream is not impossible, but it does take strategy, does take time, and it does take thought and a team around you. So find your team, you know, like if there's a team that shares a common dream, find them, work with them. They will be more than glad to be parts of a crew. So like that's what I had to spill out to the world. Find the people with common dreams.
I'm curious to hear Autumn's take.
Unfortunately, I think a lot of people do always want to take the shortcut route. And like, we're talking about social media, we're talking about the gaming industry. I think because of the world that we're living in today, because everything is so accessible, I think just because you can do something doesn't mean that you always should do something. So I think like if not everybody's called, right, to start their own thing or to build a whole empire, some people genuinely find enjoyment going to their job. And then I think if somebody is looking to start something up, maybe don't do it if you're going to sacrifice your ethics or you're looking to take the shortcut route just to make money and it's fueled out of greed. I do think if you're going to do something, everything takes intentionality and it takes a lot of effort. And if you're not willing to put in that effort or make it intentional and make it special, and you're just doing it for selfish reasons, then maybe reevaluate why you're going after what you need to do or want to do. Yeah, and always like kind of take a temperature on where your morals are, where your ethics are going, because we have access to all of this technology and social media and everything is fast paced, kind of like slow down and really see like, what do you want? What brings you, what is your purpose? Because again, like if you're going to do something and you're going to cheat a lot of people out of something, like it's not worth it. So yeah, just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I think the responsibility of value comes with a lot of suffering. And this is why a lot of people choose the shortcuts, because they don't want to experience the pain that goes behind what you don't see, the tears you don't see when you love something or someone, the suffering that happens internally, the words you never say, the thoughts that you wanted to live and you couldn't, sometimes is deceiving, right? And it brings you to a point where you stop believing in yourself, right? And how do you overcome those thoughts? How do you overcome that feeling, that sensation? And to me in my journey, I can only speak of myself because everyone has their personal journey, right? It's not only understanding myself, but understanding that God loves me unconditionally, and that always catapulted me to achieve greater things, and that nothing was impossible. And as a matter of fact, I don't believe anything is impossible at this point. It just takes a lot of suffering to gather what you want, because you have to put in the effort for value. And also, without suffering for things and experiencing a journey, you don't value things the way you should. Because if it comes easy, guess what? It goes easy. And achieving dreams and achieving love requires a lot of effort, a lot of things that you might have to accommodate for the other person, a lot of sacrifices, a lot of commitment, a lot of not thinking in yourself, right? And this is why it's so important in any industry, even with ourselves, the intentions we have towards one another. Like a good leader that has good intention is a noble leader, and a noble leader will always do right for everyone because they're not thinking only about their own success. They're thinking about how relevant everyone's life is, right? And how can they fulfill their dreams, even if it's not for their benefit, right? And I think we don't see a lot of those leaders out there, and that's where we struggle because we don't teach that, we don't educate that. One of the things that my career, I focus a lot is that, in Forging Champions, I've always talk about development, growth. But what does that mean, right? What is the meaning of that? And the real meaning is like self-sufficiency. Love yourself. Understand if you are able to love yourself, you're able to love even the people that you dislike, because you will find that their information is valuable and you will be able to learn from that perspective, right? And I wanted to shoot this question to you, Fang. What are your dreams? What is something that you always wanted to achieve? I know I just threw like a rocket ball. She's like, whoa.
I was like, you're asking like, what's the meaning of life? I'm like, oh shoot, I don't know. I mean, my dream is definitely like working with the games. I think everyone has that point after or during college or after college. It's like, oh, what am I supposed to do with life? Like everyone else seems to know exactly what they want, and I had no idea. And I'm very happy and I feel blessed to work with what I like. I work with games and then I turn around, go to the bedroom and start playing games. It's like, I'm just surrounded by games all the time. I don't have like a specific dream. Like I don't have like, this is exactly where I want to go. I think I'm more of the type of, I'm happy to go to my job because, I feel like I'm appreciated. I think that helps a lot because if you go somewhere and feeling appreciated, it's like, why would I even want to be here? I think my goal is just like travel the world, just be happy. Like I'm a simple person. I don't have, grand goals in that kind of sense. Just like live a peaceful life. That's it.
Look, guys, she's living her dream. That's why, that's great.
I'm like, I'm good.
That's great. What about you guys? What are your dreams?
You can take it away.
Kevin got the look. Kevin got the look. He was like, I'm starting this one, Kevs.
Okay. So my dreams have always been to become not like a great photographer, a very diverse photographer, one that can be placed in any setting and take amazing photos. And that could be for because like a photographer is your eye. It's how you use the environment, how you use everything around. Like my version of photography even shifted when I got into the wedding industry, because then I learned it's like now it's not just like learning the camera and taking the photo. Now it's people managing. I wasn't expecting to be a photographer and people manage, but it kind of like happened to go in that way, right? And it worked so well because that developed the skill for me to learn how to be directive, right? How to direct somebody into a certain pose or a certain position, how to get a group involved. The wedding industry expanded my photography in so many ways, and it's a way of living out my dream too, because I'm now getting placed into any environment, being told to just go on, have free freedom with your photos, even though I stick to a system because there's standards to get, but outside of the system I could get really creative. And we get to like travel a little bit too. Like I haven't never been like outside of like really New York too much, and I get to like travel all the way to different parts of Jersey, all the way to Boston, Delaware, Connecticut, Long Island, something I've never done before, and I love the adventure of it. And even though I can't stay there for the day, and it's just only for like the night, where it's only like a day travel there, like 2 hours of driving there and 2 hours driving back after a full day, making it like 12 to 14-hour day. But I loved it though. It got me outside to go explore outside of New York City. And then my second dream that started coming up was Maestro Galleria. And I always had a dream of making like a gallery, like a digital gallery, and to have people connect on art, like the new social platform, but for art. So it'll be really like art centered. People could talk about it, people could connect on it, and then ultimately have it as commerce as well for a whole bunch of different levels of artists. So like you have like these expert artists that are all the way up here, and you have these entry artists, and they all get to make a sale. Like if I could get people on there and they all make a sale, that would it's providing it's providing beauty to the world. And now imagine if like you see all these empty buildings that are gray, let's put some color on them, right? And like Maestro Galleria will help you put that color on it. So we'll get that graffiti artist that needs that wants to transform just being tagging. We may put up a mural, and we can finally get him to put up a mural by commission by the owner of the building to make their place more beautiful. Like it's adding beauty to the world. And now if that dream gets to go on to like a massive like scale, then we'll be adding beauty to the whole world from Maestro Galleria. And that's the dream of like for the digital application. And I'm only in the start where I have six artists on board so far. So I'm already living it. So
Let's go.
right there. I'm getting their stuff on t-shirts, and that's how I'm going to build the finances for it. And then boom, right after that is going to get development onto the application. And then it'll go around the world, hopefully. But every step of the way, I'm at the entry level right now. So I'm almost there.
I think over the years, my dreams have definitely shifted and changed. And I'm in places right now where I never thought I would be. I just hope to continue to evolve every day and to continue to embrace like the changes that life has. I've always been afraid of change, but that's something that is definitely certain in our lives. Change will always be there. So I can only hope to continue to embrace it every day and allow it to continue to mold me and change me. And, that's the beauty of being in the creative field and of being a photographer. You get to experience, you get to observe. And I love being an observer and capturing the beauty that's around me. But I definitely did not expect to be in certain positions where I have to, take the lead or direct people. I've never wanted to do that ever. I remember I love cinema and I've always had a dream to be a director one day, but I would always say like, I'm never going to try to attempt that because I cannot direct anybody. And now like in these positions, I'm like, whoa, little me is like, what are you doing? Like, we never thought we would do that.
You should see Autumn out there. She tells everybody like, hey, stand over here. Like, she does something.
Like, I think my introverted self has definitely like grown a lot. But yeah, I guess like a dream right now is just to continue to evolve and to accept change with a lot of grace. Yeah.
Good. It's good to hear you guys' dreams, right? And most of you guys already live in it, right? I would share my dreams with you guys. I believe that my biggest purpose in life, now that I found clear objectives, when you are in a obscure place, is literally where you find your identity, and you're able to establish what you really want to do and how is that going to impact everyone else's life, right? Because it's not about you living your own life. It's about the impact you cause on everyone else. And it's continuing to really educate people through mental health, how to cope, creating coping mechanisms so people can overcome stress. Also to understand that everyone faces fear, and fear is okay. But how does fear convert into bravery? And how courageous you can become day by day by deciding to embrace change. And again, change is inevitable. Like every second that passes, you're older. That's a change. And it's inevitable. You can't do anything about it. So you got to mold yourself to those cycles of change. Be able to help the veterans community, with people that struggle with PTSD. Among one of them, I'm somebody that will live with PTSD for the rest of my life. I understand the fear. I understand the quietness. I understand the doubts that it creates and the insecurities. But there's always solutions to that, right? And it all starts with just one talk, right? And then how you embrace yourself through that journey, and then how you mature with it, right? How PTSD can be a good companion to you, and you turn your anxiety into self-development, right? And then ultimately, the Ethics Guild podcast, we just want to educate people on different perspectives. It's not about fame. This is why I believe that I think we always want to keep it simple. Even if the channel grows big, everyone has heard big stars and channels. But to me, the most interesting stories are the common people, the people that live day life without all the privileges, right? I'm not saying that people that have more resources don't have interesting stories. They do, but they often already put most of those stories in the air, and most people already know them. But what about the mom that worked 3 jobs and put all their kids through college? Their stories are not told, and they become opaque to a great story about resilience, right? Those are the stories that I want to cover with you guys, and make sure that they are known as heroes, right? There's a lot of fallen heroes that their stories are never heard. And this is what this platform is all about. And then I have a particular dream that I can't share with you, that I pray every day that it happens. And I hope that, sometime in my life, I'm able to live that experience again. But that's just very personal. And I'm very happy with where my life has taken me. I regret a lot of things, but it was something that I had to live through, and it molded me to who I am. And I have 2 more questions for you guys, and I know that we've been here for quite a while. We all been through academic backgrounds. What you guys learned through your academic backgrounds in college, and where do you see the difference between the theory and the practice?
Well,
Should I?
yeah.
I mean, I think it differs quite a lot. At least I can only speak from my perspective, because I know, for example, the bachelor's degree here in Sweden is 3 years. I think in Europe it's only 3 years, while I think in the US it's 4. College here is also free, so that's, I think, a huge difference.
I envy you, Fang.
Yeah, I never had to pay anything. I mean, you can take a student loan. It's more like if you want to live in a different city, you need to have some of the expenses paid. So we do have a student loan. But if you're a citizen, you want to go to college, never have to worry about your grades. That's it. Especially if you're going to med school. But for me, like my degree, I can honestly say it's entirely useless. I honestly only went to college so my parents would stop complaining. So I have a bachelor in like international relationships, focusing on like the development and like third world countries like situations, for example, with foreign aid and stuff like this. It does not apply to gaming whatsoever. Never had to use it. No one's ever looked at my diploma. I just put it on my CV. It's like, hey, I went to college. They're like, cool, we don't really care. Sweden has a big value, and if you don't have a college degree, it doesn't hinder you from getting a good job. It's just basically like, you know what you're doing, you have the experience. Work experience is valued more than how many colleges or what college you went to. I have we're not really friends. I have someone that I went to school with from like elementary school up to the 9th grade. He is actually the CEO of the like North American branch for a glassware company. And he never even, I think he went to high school and that's it. And then he just worked himself up to become like such a big, have such a big role. And I think that just really shows that, people value, like if you know what you're doing or you have a good, entrepreneur mind and you have experience, you're going to go really far. I don't know how it is in the US. I think it's a little bit more, I know we all heard about the American dream. So I know it's definitely doable, but I think there's a lot of these like you guys put a little bit more value in like what school do you go to? Like, oh, Harvard is much better than a state college, for example. But you should have like a degree, and even better if you have a master's, an MBA, and like there's more status in that. I don't know if I'm fucking out of my bum, but
Yeah.
I want to hear your guys' perspective.
Yeah, there's definitely a focus on the aesthetic. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of pressure on being able to pass a test instead of making sure that you're absorbing the information. I wasn't always a great test taker. I had a lot of test anxiety, but I could absorb information really well in order to pass a test. But I started pushing myself just to like absorb the information for myself. So I think in that regard, education kind of over here, it's very test heavy. And there is like a status thing. People who go to Ivy Leagues are like seen as top notch. And when you mention you go to community college, they kind of scoff at you. They're like, oh. And sometimes when I say like, I'm like in discussions and I'll say like, oh, you know, I went to college. They're like, where did you go? And I'm like, oh, like CUNY school. And they're like, oh. It's very like, okay, you're over here. But I will say I had amazing professors at my local community college, and it was beautiful. And for me, I love the structure that was provided in my education, like through deadlines and through presentations. Even though I hated it, it taught me a lot about routine, responsibility, and how to make sure you're meeting deadlines and kind of like fighting procrastination and just like making sure you're in the rhythm of that. I don't know, for me, college was great. It really helped me open up my creativity. It helped me explore a lot of theories creatively that I wouldn't have approached on my own. And it just helped me like kind of gave me the confidence I needed to go after like what I loved. And I love the independence of it. You get to go to school for subjects that you actually enjoy learning about, and you're going to get an education because you're hungry for knowledge. It's not just like you're going to school because you have to. So I'm a big promoter of college for that reason. Unfortunately, we do have to pay for college over here, and it is expensive. And it's not. I wish because I would be in college all day long if it was free. But yeah, it's molded me in a way where I can be curious and approach things, always looking to understand a story and the greater side of things. You know, broaden my perspectives and understand my peers. And I took away everything I learned in college. I recommend, in my opinion. How about you, Kevin?
Originally, I wasn't going to go to college. Like I didn't really like want to go to college because with the major that I really wanted to go into, it was more based on experience. Can you use your camera and how well can you use it? And how well can you adapt to certain situations while using the camera? Which didn't really have to do with like the education of history. Like it's good to know about the history of it. It's good to know about like certain theories of it and to know the origins. Like you know the origins and you know the direction of where it was going in. But as an artist, I was like, I don't really need college for art. It just so happened that before like applying to college, I got into a program that was called the ASAP program. And the ASAP program, it was an accelerated study for an associate's degree. In Staten Island, they extended it because it was for all CUNY schools, and all CUNY schools had 2-year degrees, but in Staten Island it was a CUNY, but they also had bachelors. So the ASAP program adjusted themselves for the Staten Island college so that you get your bachelor's degree for free. So basically, the only reason why I went was because I got into the ASAP program, and they basically paid for the tuition, and they paid for transportation. They paid for all of it. So if anybody's out there going to college right now and going to CUNY and NYC, search up ASAP program so then you go for free. They're definitely, and they help you with advisors too. So like 2 times a month, you meet up with an advisor. Even though I hated that part too, but it was worth it because it was free. So they just want to make sure you're doing good. And then the things that I learned in college, like I said before, history, a little bit of the origins, techniques, but taking the theories into the world wasn't like. It was just things that like I already knew. Like before I got into into the fine arts and the quote unquote fine arts, I was always a photographer. So what they were teaching, like I learned photography like I was already like 5 years of a photographer. So I already knew like what they were like going through and what they were teaching in the classes. And I didn't really need like it too much. So I was like somewhat accelerating the classes as well. And then my only class I was really looking forward to was a portfolio making class, right? Because I needed to learn how to make a portfolio. Like I have all this good work, but I didn't know how to like put it into a portfolio. And as soon as I got into a class, it was nothing about portfolios. It was all about editing. And I was like, yeah, and I challenged the teacher too. And I was like, cause I challenged the teacher because I'm like, I'm paying for the class, and I'm like, I'm not learning how to set up my portfolio. And I told her, I was like, why are we learning editing tricks? And then she was like, they're not tricks. And I was like, but it is a trick. It's an editing trick. You're manipulating the image for an edit. You're not like we're not learning how to organize and learning how to put stuff into a portfolios. And that was a class I was really looking forward to because I didn't have like a good organization process with my images. I really wanted to learn that, but I didn't learn that in college. I learned my organization from the wedding industry because I was like, that became a make or break. If I wasn't organized in the wedding industry, I could lose a client's work, and next thing you know, we get sued. And I didn't want to get sued, so the pressure of experience is what made me learn. So
it's funny that you guys mention these little things about college, right? But I do believe that what college does a lot, it unconsciously, it helps you develop how to express your ideas and put them in writing and be able to express them better, right? It's about, for example, when you make an essay of 1,000 words, what it's telling you, be more technical. Choose your words more carefully. So the academic teaches you how to evaluate your thoughts before you say something. How do you investigate, right? Where do you get your resources? Go find, discover, and then from all that discovery, create your own criteria of what you found. So unconsciously, it helps us develop criteria. Believe it or not, it's very unconscious because, trust me, everyone that goes to college is like, what did I get from it? I pay so much money. But that's exactly what they want, because eventually in your life, when you're leading, communication is key, right? It is key about how you move things around and how you inspire people and motivate them, and how you inspire yourself and motivate yourself, right? Last question. And this is fans' top 5 games of all time. And if you guys have some games, please throw it. I have my 5, and I think I have. I'm crazy to hear Fang's like top 5 games of all time.
I have like 2 games that are always number 1 because I can't really separate the two, which is Journey, which I actually have a tattoo of, and then it's Mass Effect. I really like Mass Effect 1 to 3. Like I replayed the games like 6 times. I do the same choices, romance the same person, but like I know what I want from the game. And every like 2-3 years, I'm like, I get the itch. I'm like, I really should replay this game. And then it's The Last of Us. I don't know if you played the first and the second one. And then Red Dead Redemption 2, actually, I really enjoyed as well. But for different reasons. But I only have 4. I couldn't come up with the 5th.
Okay.
So that's
I'll throw one in that you might like a lot.
Which one?
Either Gears of War or Enslaved. Remember Pixie?
Yeah, but it's like I enjoy them, but it's not like it didn't like change my perspective on things, if that makes sense. Like some games just really like gives you a lot to think about.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
Unfortunately, guys, I'm not a gamer, but
Candy Crush counts. Candy Crush counts. Okay. Now,
so I will definitely look up these games that you are recommending. I'd love to play them. I don't have anything to contribute.
I was raised in the Black Ops era, Modern Warfare era. So
You were shooting zombies like crazy, Kev?
heck yeah, doing all those Easter eggs and all. It'll be me and my friends online just trying to get those Easter eggs working in coordination and be like, yo, someone hold the zombie while I go over here. It was great. So I guess like Modern Warfare 2, my favorite. Or just for the Rust map, quick scoping was one of my favorite things to do. And then we have like Black Ops 3. Really, that was like the best ones. And they started coming out with DLC maps, which I really loved. But I think like I love the old Modern Warfare. The new one is like you don't pay, you pay for skins and stuff, and then you always got to be paying for everything. The old ones was like it was you earned the skins, you earned certain stuff, and I used to love going for those challenges. So that's two. I have Modern Warfare 2, Black Ops 3. My third one is Apex. Apex was fun. Now I have
I
another.
have like 1,500 hours in it. I played Apex so much. So
Yeah,
do you still play now, or
I'm on like on and off. Whenever I hang out with my brother, that's when I play. Cause he has a system. I don't have a system, and so we're like me and him had to like always switch on and off. So now my new system of playing is on the computer and with clothes. But outside of
what's your
that,
favorite characters to play?
oh, my favorite one is Pathfinder. Pathfinder, that's my guy. Just because he could launch his slingshot and then start along with it. It reminded me of like it extended the game to become like a roller coaster. Like just because the way I used to utilize Pathfinder, like I'll be quick with him. And Octane too, that was another character, just for his jump pad and his speed. Like I'll have one enemy over here, and the next thing you know, I'm like I hit the stem and I go around and then just light them up. It was great. It was great games. Yeah, so those are my two favorite operators in Apex. And then the new ones, I don't really have a grip on the new ones yet. But my brother, he knows how to utilize them very well. I'm like, how does he use like one of those new, like the new Portal character, like shoot through the wall to go through another one? I'm like, how?
All right. I got my 5.
Yeah.
Please forgive me. A lot of these games are from, I guess, consoles that are considered vintage.
Oh, you're
So-
21.
Yeah, 21 years of I don't know what, but of playing games probably or more. But I would start with Mass Effect, all 3. Like I thought in that game I was Commander Shepard myself, trying to save the galaxy, embracing partnership with all these different type of people that were trying to accomplish the same mission as me. And believe it or not, it was an intense game too. I would say BioShock.
Oh, that's
BioShock really like put me on another dimension. I was like, what is going on? Especially spoiler alert, especially on BioShock 1 when he says, "Would you kindly?" And I'm like, no way, this guy like hypnotized me to do all of this with that word. I was like, no, it was a no moment for me. Soul Reaver, which there's a relaunch. I'm very happy they're relaunching all 3 of them from, I would say, Legacy of Kain, which is an old game from the 90s. Symphony of the Night, Castlevania. Alucard is my guy. Like that guy, if I don't have any tattoos, but if I had to choose, that would be my guy. Alucard somewhere in my arm. And there's a tied on 5th place. And it's an old Nintendo system, right? The Legend of Zelda. Old Legend of Zelda and Metroid, Super Metroid. Those 2 games to me were, especially at the time, Zelda was so intriguing, so many secrets. Yeah, yes, it was like little dots, right? Pixels, like 5 pixels, I think. But it was so interesting, the adventure it took you in. And if I had a 6, it will be Enslaved. My guy Pixie was the man. He sacrificed a lot for a monkey, So that's my pick, guys. I really want to thank everyone for being present today, and Stay tuned. We're going to have more episodes, more chapters with a lot of more interesting people coming in and guests. Any final thoughts about, you know, about your journey and your experience with the Ethics Guild podcast, Fang?
It was great. I was very happy to meet all of you, and for thank you for having me and listen to my story and my perspective.
Yeah, and just to end the podcast, I don't, I don't want to put anyone in the spot, but there was something that made me laugh so hard the other day. Actually, Autumn and Kevin have a very great relationship. It's all about something happened with the banana. This, you have to hear this, Fang. This is hilarious, and Kevin is a true trooper. I don't know if you
So Kevin was doing a photo shoot, and I thought he didn't eat breakfast, so I was like, oh, you know what, I'll go surprise him, and I'll get him breakfast. But he hates bananas, so I was like, you know what, I'm going to get him a healthy breakfast. So I go to this little shop, I get him a smoothie and like a quinoa bowl, and I didn't know, I read the ingredients and there was no bananas in it. I get it, and there was chopped up bananas all in it, and I was like, oh. So I give it to him, and I was like, unfortunately, there's bananas in there, but you can pick it out. And he looked at it, and he was like, thank you so much for getting this for me. And he just ate the whole thing, and he just like he didn't complain, and I felt so terrible. But yeah, he was a trooper for that.
I knew I had to get to the top layer. Like once I got to the top layer, then I'll enjoy the rest. So I was like, like each like gulp, I was like, but I had to get through it. The honey helped a little bit, and a little bit of like nuts on top to make it a little crunchy. But each gulp was like, but it was so like the breakfast was so good, and I loved it, and I saw the love that was put into it, and I said, just gotta do it, just gotta eat it. I just gotta eat it for her. So good.
I'm telling you.
So sweet.
Well, this is how we conclude our episode. Thank you guys for being here. Don't forget to subscribe, hit like if you like what we did today, and expect some shorts from this. Thank you.
I get lost in values of great cities that give vacuum lessons that just pass you that whole real value. Just me and my shadow amongst these statues.
Can I take your order, please?